This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Bruchim Abayim, Sefer Daniel, Parak Ches. We were learning about the vision of Daniel, where Daniel saw, and we pointed out Daniel saw a vision about the Arba Golios, the Arba Malchios, more vivid than any of the other Nevi'im, where he lifted up his eyes, and in Pasuk Gimel we read that he saw an ayal that was standing by the Uval River, and the ayal had two horns, high horns, and one of them was higher than the next, but the second one was higher than the first. And we pointed out that ayal, we'll learn later today, Eretz Hashem, represents Paras Umadai. It was a dual Malchus, where the Paras, first came the Madai, which was only for 1 year, and then Paras came, which was greater than that. And then Daniel saw this ayal was goring to the south, to the north, to the west, and none of the animals were able to stand up to it, and it did as it pleased. And we pointed out that what does it mean, these different directions? The Persian Empire extended southward, westward, northward. It went into Europe, it went into Middle East, went to Egypt, and so forth. But then there was a male goat who came from the west, and it almost looked as if it did not touch the ground, as if it was flying in the air. And the goat had a very conspicuous horn on between its eyes, and we learned that this goat represented the Greek Empire, and it was so swift, it was so fast, it looked as if it was flying in the air, and it did not touch the ground, and it had a horn between its eyes, which implied that it was a malchus of great wisdom. Between the eyes refers to the mind, and it approaches the ram that was standing in the Uval River, and it runs to it with all of its force, and it reaches it, and they are embroiled in a bitter entanglement. It smacks the ram, it breaks both of its horns. The ram had no koyach to stand up to it. It thrusts it down to the ground, it tramples it, and it's ki'ilu lo haya. And this goat becomes very great, and in its prime, in its prime, the horn breaks, and in its place rise 4 horns. We said again, this goat represents the Greek Empire, led by who? Alexander the Great, who at the young age of 20 took over the world basically, and for 12 years he ruled mamish the whole world. And after him, his empire broke up into 4 parts. It broke up into Talmai, Seleucus, Antigonos, and another guy that I don't remember his name right now. And those are the 4 parts of the Greek Empire. They were like, after he died, they took over Egypt, Israel, Syria.
And so this was his region. He ruled when he was away, and then he took over part of the empire.
Yeah. So who's the 4th one? Antigonos, Seleucus, Talmai. Who's number 4?
I don't remember. Seleucus? No, that's Seleucus.
Seleucus.
Empire. That was in the east.
Okay. In any event, what happens? We're up to Pasuk Tes. Umin ha'achas mehem, and from one of them, Yatsa karen achas, a horn arises. Mitzeira, a small one. Vatigdal yeser, and it grows more. El hanegev to the south, Ve'el mizrach to the east, Ve'el sevi, and to the desired land. What is the desired land? Eretz Yisrael, Israel. Now there's a big machlokes. What is this talking about? Again, this is an offshoot of the Greek Empire. What is this talking about? The Ibn Ezra learns that this is talking about Antiochus. Antiochus, of course, now there were a number of Antiochuses. It was Antiochus and then his son, and then Antiochus and his son. So Antiochus, he was, according to the Ibn Ezra, Pasuk Tes is reference to Antiochus. If you look at the Ibn Ezra, Hatam Mamlachos Achas Me'ela, one of these kingdoms, Yatsa Karen Ketana, the Mispar Tzva, the Hisha Haisa Be'eretz Yisrael Be'antuchya. He was in the land of Antiochus in Antiochia, V'hu Antiochus, V'gava al Malchus Mitzrayim, and it ruled over Egypt, Darom, La'eretz Yisrael, Kirochav Mitzrayim Me'akav. In other words, according to the opinion of Ibn Ezra, this is a reference to the reign of Antiochus under the Greek Empire. Rashi, however, disagrees. Rashi learns that this is in fact referring to the Roman Empire. Now it's very interesting. We learned that the majority view is the Roman Empire is a separate Malchus, right? That the Roman Empire is the fourth. The Greek are the third and the Romans are the fourth. But in fact, we've pointed out in the past that the opinion of the Ibn Ezra is that the fourth Malchus is Yishmael, and the Roman Empire is a subsidiary of the Greek Empire because Yavan had a son, the Kittim are the Romans. But in any event, Rashi over here learns that this breakaway from the Greeks is referring to the Romans. Rashi says, specifically referring to Titus, and it's when we say it's small, mitziira, it doesn't mean in quantity, but rather they're very disgraceful in quality. The Navi calls them bazoyata ma'od, and it grew very great. Now look at Rashi ve'el hatzvi, Eretz Yisrael shenikros Eretz Tzvi, the land of the deer. So the Gemara in Gittin says it's called the land of the deer, just like a deer. Actually, if you were to skin and flay the deer, you would find that the skin of the deer is actually smaller than the body of the deer. After you remove its skin, it's impossible to understand how the deer actually fit into the skin. But literally, tzvi means the desirable one. You know, like we say in Anim Zemiros, right? Tzvi is the desired land. Okay, pasuk yud. What? Akdamus also. What do we say in? What? That's yesterday. La'ateres tzvi, right? Yeah. So the word tzvi is referring to the land of desire. Okay. In any event, Vatigdal ad tzva hashamayim. It raised up till the host of the heaven. Now, what does it mean, the host of the heaven? What is a host? What is a host? Host refers
one
to...
who gives you to... who invites you.
Yeah, but in this case, the word host also refers to a star. Who are the stars? Often hosts refer to the malachim. But in this instance... The what? Okay, so yeah, that we're not up to that yet, but yeah, well, we're not up to that yet. Until now, when we say it was specifically referring to Titus, and we're going to see you're correct that we're going to bring in Nero Caesar. It reached the host of the heaven. That's Klal Yisrael. We are God's hosts. We are God's stars in this world. So, in other words, either according to the Ibn Ezra, referring to the Greeks, Antiochus, or according to Rashi, it's referring to Titus. They did not just want to destroy the power of the Jewish people, but rather their intention was to uproot the Jewish people's role as God's hosts. Vatapel arza, and they cast us down to the ground min hatzava, from the stars. Umin hakochavim, vatirmisim, and they trampled us. Now, if this is referring to the Romans, it's very clear. The Romans.
What's the difference between tzava and kochavim?
So the Metzudas David says it's the same thing. The kefal b'shemus nerdafim. It's just a poetic two ways of saying the same thing. But the Malbim is known to repudiate that concept that there's no such thing as shemus and nerdafim. There's no such thing as two synonyms. Every word has a different nuance of meaning. So the Malbim says. That there is a difference in nuance between Sava and Koichavim. Sava implies that they are the officers of God. They have a certain sanctified role, and as Koichavim, the nuance of Koichavim is that they're Matzdike Harabim.
Is he referring to Catholicism here?
Not specifically. Even according to Rashi, it's referring to the early years of the Roman Empire, before they adopted Catholicism as the official religion. So in the beginning, it was a secular empire. So it's referring to the Romans' decimation of the Jewish people on the Beis Hamikdash. Vatermasim, they trampled them. Viad Sar Hatzava Higdil, they raised them.
Who trampled who?
The Romans trampled the Jewish people, or according to Ibn Ezra, Antiochus and the Greeks trampled the Jewish people. Yeah? The Ad Sar Hatzava Higdil, they raised themselves up until the general of the host. Now, if we're the host, who's the general?
God.
Bani Shalom. Right. So they raised themselves up to the general of the host. Umimenu, and from there, Huram HaTamid. Now this is also an important thing. What does this mean? What does it mean they raised themselves up to the general of the army? Says Rashi, Hu Beis HaMikdash. That is a temple. Shehu Beis Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sar HaTzava, who's the general. Klape HaKadosh Baruch Hu Cherev. They blaspheme to God. Umimenu Huram HaTamid. Ve'al Yidei Geduda V'chayaloisav. Through the troops and army that Sheshach L'Yushalayim. Batal HaTamad. They were able to abolish the Karban Tamid. Rabbi said, does anybody know how many years before the Churban Bayesheni was the Tamid stopped? 6 years. 414 years into Bayesheni, the Tamid came to an end. Who abolished it? Mr. Sherman. Neron Kesar. Shesham. Neron Kesar. Shar Tzvai, like you see in the Gemara in Gittin. So according to Rashi, the word Huram means what? They uprooted the Tamid. They cast away the Tamid. The Malbim understands it differently. The Malbim understands it.
Isn't Huram motion of raising up?
Ah, good. So the Malbim wants to say, Huram, it could mean to remove, right? You remove something by lifting it up. But literally it means to raise up, like Lehisroimim. So says the Malbim, according to the Ibn Ezra, that we're dealing with the Greeks, and the Greeks put an end to what? The Karban Tamid. Not 6 years before the Churban Bayesheni. In the times of the Chanukah, they put an end to the Karban Tamid. So al yidei the Chashmonaim, Huram HaTamid. The Tamid was raised back onto its formal pedestal. Right? The Malbim says, Shatamid Shayabata Adhena Yidei Yavanim Nisraimim Al Yidei Kach HaChashmonaim. Okay? V'hushlach Mechayin Mikdashay. Rabbi say, it's very interesting. Just a thought came to my mind that in the times of Chanukah, before the Chashmonaim restored the Avodah came to a halt. The Kohanim were not able to do Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Even before then, the first thing they did was they stopped the Tamid. They stopped the Avodah. The Bach says, why? What did Klal Yisrael do that warranted that the Avodah should stop? So the Bach says, when we're nisrashel in the Avodah, when we're weak, when we're lackadaisical in Avodah Hashem, especially in the Beis Hamikdash, so mida k'neged mida, God says, you're being lax in the Avodah, I'll take it away from you. Then the Kohanim, how did they rectify that?
Lax in the Avodah.
We did it. No question, we did it. But it was not with the Zrizos that it once was, and because of that, God took it away. And the way we were masaking that, the Bach says, were the Kohanim, the Chashmonaim, were Moiser Nefesh for the Avodah, and that's why in Chanukah we celebrate not the Mishta V'Simcha, but rather L'Hoidei Sulahala. So you think about now, where you have these different movements at the Makam HaMikdash to sort of stop the Avodah, interfere with the Avodah. And you can't help but think that we only have one precedent in history where the Avodah stopped, and we know what the reason was. We know it was because we were Nisrashel Ba'avodah. So maybe it should make us think about what we need to do. That the tikkun for the times of Chanukah was we had to be mechazik in the Avodah. Okay.
And we first learn how to be Kol Yisrael Rebbe's always there. Then we won't have this problem. But what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So much machlokas internally into Nisan warfare between
Yeah, look,
different,
in the times of the Yevanim, there were many, many Misyavnim. And, we were not held accountable, that these Misyavnim, we should have drawn them close, we should have... It's us. It's those who are the Yereim Ushleimim have to, take a look at themselves and say, maybe we're not doing what we need to do. What?
They put them at Pesach in Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah, they put it, and unfortunately today the same thing is happening. Okay, in any event, this is what happened. It was Huram HaTamid v'Hushach Machon Mikdasha v'Tzava Tinasein Al HaTamid b'Fasha. Now here, Tzava means a time, deadline. Rashi says, Zman Moyed Nasan, a time was given. V'Tzava Tinasein, a time was given Al HaTamid, for the Tamid, b'Fasha, to be exchanged for an abomination.
What's an abomination?
Abomination is an avodah zarah. In other words, a time, God set a time. Now when this time comes, the Tamid will stop, and the avodah zarah will start. V'sashlech emes arza, truth will be thrown to the ground. V'asasa, and they will act. V'hitzlicha, they will be successful. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, V'tzava tinasein al hatamid b'fasha, Uzman moye nasan, a time was given liyos hatamid mesulak, that the carbon tamid should be removed, b'shvil pesha shoymim, because of a mute abomination. Here avodas galilim, that's avodah zarah. Kalamar sheteheh avodah zarah nitenes b'Yushalayim, idols will be placed in Jerusalem, tmuras hatamid, in exchange for the tamid. V'chein hi kruya b'sefer hazeh b'chama mekaymes. Avodah zarah in this sefer is called in many places. Shenemar ad mosai hachazon hatamid v'hapesha shoymim. Until when is this vision going to take place? And it says v'hapasha shoymim, and the mute abomination v'omer me'es husar hatamid. It says that when the tamid was removed, v'lases shikutz shoymim, that's when the mute abomination will be placed.
Isn't this many years later than Menashe, King Menashe?
Yeah, Menashe is in times of the first Beis HaMikdash.
He proliferated idols all over the place.
Yeah, but it was not in exchange for the Tamid. In other words, the Tamid was being brought simultaneously. The Nevuah of Daniel is that from the moment the Tamid stops, that is when Avodah Zarah will be installed. So when did that happen? 2 occasions in Bayesheni. In the times of the Yevanim, they put an end to the Tamid, whatever, 200 years before the Churban, and at that point they were Hemed Selam Heichal. And then again, 6 years before Churban Bayesheni, again the Tamid stopped, and again they installed an Avodah Zarah. So you're right, there were periods of Avodah Zarah in Eretz Yisrael, but here specifically, it's the moment the Tamid is removed, the Avodah Zarah will be installed. That happened in the end of Bayesheni. We're specifically referring to the end of Bayesheni, according to others, in the times of Hanukkah.
Did Daniel live through this, or is he predicting?
He's predicting it. It's unbelievable. We'll see. I read something this morning. You'll see a couple psukim. The predictions of Daniel of what's going to happen in 500 years from him. Right? He is talking about the Persian Empire. Now, the Persian Empire he lived through. He didn't live through the Greek Empire. Alexander the Great was hundreds of years after Daniel. Well, 300 years after Daniel, 200 years after Daniel. And he's predicting the Greek Empire will have one head, and then in its prime break up into 4. I mean, how could anybody know that? Right? This is not like,
When was Daniel written? You said it was written by the Anshe Knesset Gadol.
Anshe Knesset Gadol, the beginning of Bayesheni, very beginning, right? So they're predicting someone from the Greek Empire will be great, and in his prime he'll break up into 4. Okay? So it's in 200 years from then. And Kachava exactly, right? It's amazing. Greek Empire, Alexander, 20 years old. In 12 years he's flying through the world. And then in his prime, suddenly he breaks up into 4. That was the prediction of Daniel, right? And here, it's not like sometimes you say, oh, that's how you shtup it into the words. This is open, right? It's open psukim. Tremendous chizuk in the Amunah and the Nevi'im. That here, Daniel is living in the times of Galus Bavel, during the Babylonian Empire. The Persians had just come to power. And he's telling you that the Greeks, who were nothing then, are going to conquer the Persians, and then break up into 4, in the height of their power. Okay? So, Pasuk Yud Gimel. V'eshma'a echad kadosh medaber. Then I heard a holy one speaking. What does that mean? Who are the holy ones? The angels. So I heard one of the angels speaking. Vayomer echad kadosh. One of the holy angels said, La Palmoini. To a man by the name of Palmoini. Not a man, an angel. Now what is this name, Palmoini?
Pliny Almoini.
Palmoini is a compound word. It's two words together. Rashi says, Hare tevazu kishtayim. Pliny Almoini. And what does Pliny Almoini mean? Yonasan ben Uziel says in Shmuel, Kasi v'tamir. Covered and hidden. Almoin mibli shame. Without a name. In other words, one malach is talking to an anonymous malach. Now,
Well, it has to be anonymous.
what? Okay. And not only was he anonymous, he was hamadaber. He was the one speaking. In other words, until now, who was telling Daniel all of this vision? An anonymous malach. And now Daniel hears the anonymous malach speaking to one of the malachim.
No, one of the malachim was speaking to that anonymous malach.
Correct. Thank you. One of the malachim who was speaking speaking to, in other words, to the anonymous malach. Well, let me just clarify. I'm not retracting completely. I heard a malach say, who did he say to? The anonymous malach who was speaking in the past. In other words, the beginning of Parak Ches was said by an anonymous malach, and another malach is now speaking up and asking the anonymous malach. We're going to see the anonymous malach was the malach Michael, and the malach speaking to him is the malach Gabriel. Now in the hierarchy of malachim, which malach is greater? Michael is the greatest of all the malachim. And then comes Gabriel.
Why?
Michael is the malach of Klal Yisrael, and he's mamuna over Rachamim. So he's the greatest of all the malachim. Gabriel is the malach Hadin. And he, in the hierarchy, he's after Michael.
Who's Matatron?
Matatron, he's another malach.
Pretty high?
Yeah, didn't we have a Shiur where Michael was ranked lower?
Then who?
About,
Chanoich?
this was in the Gemara. We had a whole discussion with different malachim and their ranking and what rights they had to
Different
say.
kinds of malachim. Yeah.
Michael is greater than Gabriel. Where Matatron ranks? Don't know. I believe there's an opinion that Michael is Matatron also. But we have to look at that again. But right now, the beginning of Parak Ches was stated by Michael, and at this point Gabriel is asking Michael a shaila. Now why is this malach anonymous? Why is Michael anonymous? And we're going to see that Daniel never sees Michael, he only sees Gabriel, he only hears Michael. We're going to see Daniel was not roy to see Michael. Michael was such a great malach that Daniel was not roy to see him. By the way, if you look in Masechta Brachos, the Gemara says, Michael ba'achas, Gabriel b'shtayim, Elio ba'arba, Malach Hamavas b'sheva. Remember that Gemara? Gemara in Brachos says, what page is it? Yeah. Tana. Michael ba'achas, Gabriel b'shtayim, Elio ba'arba, u'malach hamavas b'shmayna. So what does this mean? Michael is one, Gabriel is two.
He flies the world in one fly.
Michael flies the world in one swoop, Gabriel in two swoops. Why? What's the chiluk? So Rashi says,
It's a jet engine.
Inyane Michael is from Mayim, from the right side of God. He's on Rachamim. Gabriel is Eish, from the left side of God. He's Mimun al-Din, like we find in many places. And because Rachamim is greater than Din, the Marsha says, so Koyach is given to Michael to do his shlichus in one swoop, and Gabriel has to do it in two swoops. Why in two swoops? Maybe in the meantime, person will do tshuva. Okay? That's an interesting idea. Mimini Michael, U'Mismali Gabriel, Milfanei Uriel, Me'achar Epal, Ya Roishi, V'ya Roishi, right? Fine. So,
Forget about Thomas a little bit.
what do you say?
So it makes you forget about the Thomas a little bit because it's very late. Usually you're feeling hungry. And you hear that, it makes you...
So, Ad Masai Hechazain HaTamid. Gabriel asked Michael, when will this miserable vision of the Tamid, the HaPesha Shoimim, which will be substituted with the mute, abominable one, taste? When will it grant permission that V'kodesh V'tzava Mirmas, to be able to trample the sacred host? In other words, when will this happen?
What do you mean to be able to trample the sacred host?
Well, it means like this. Daniel just heard a nevuah. The nevuah was, a time has been set that the Talmud will stop and it will be supplanted by Avodah Zarah. So Gabriel has asked Michael, no, when is this going to be? When will this vision take place that the carbon Talmud is going to be supplanted by Avodah Zarah and permission granted that to be able to trample Klal Yisrael? When is this going to happen? Right? Rashi says that he's saying to Ploni HaMedaber, Lamalach Shahay Medaber, to the angel that was speaking, V'goizer Gzeros, and he was making decrees. V'tzava HaMoyed, he was setting the time, Tinasein ala Tamid B'Pasha, Ad Masai HaChazain Hazeh. When will this vision be? Asher ala Tamid, which will be on the Tamid. Lios Mesulak, that the Tamid will be removed, the HaPesha Shomim Yeh Nosam Tachtav, and the mute, abominable one will be put in its place. Pesha Shoimim Avodah Zarah Me'avodas Kechavim Shoyeh Ke'even Doimim. Okay. What does it mean? Teis V'kodesh V'tzava Mermas. Rashi says Teis means lases, to give permission that it's Mechayin HaMikdash, that the place of the base of Mikdash v'yas Tzva HaShamayim Asher Hipel La'aretz Mirmas L'Raglav. It will be trampled. So Abaisai, what will happen? When will this happen? When will this happen? Vayomer Elai, Michael says, Ad Erev Boiker, until evening, morning. Alpayim, 2,000 years. Ushloish Meos, 300 years. Venitztak Kodesh, then the holy ones will be exonerated.
2,300 years from when?
2,300 years. After an evening and a day, and a morning.
It don't say years, it could be days.
Yeah, it doesn't say years, he's right.
Vayomer Elai ad Erev, evening, Boiker, morning, Alpayim, 2,000, Shlosh Meos, 300.
Could be 2,300 days.
Maybe it's money, maybe it's dollars, maybe, you have to give a certain amount of tzedakah.
Erev, Boker, Alpayim, Shlosh. So you have 2,300 evenings and 2,300 mornings. Right? Ad Erev, Boker, Alpayim, Shlosh,
8 years.
2,300 days.
Okay.
8 years.
So, right, 2,300 years. What in the world is this talking about? Says Rashi, Ra'isi Peser B'Shem Rabbeinu Sadia L'Davar. I saw an interpretation from Reb Sadia going. The only problem is that interpretation has long passed. Right? And after his interpretation passed, Reb Sadia going said, take two. Let me interpret it differently. Until that evening comes, we trust that the word of God will stand forever. Lo Yufar will never be annulled. So Rashi says, let me take a crack at it. Vani Omer Ki ha'erev ve'haboiker ha'omer kan gematriyahu. When we say erev u'boiker, it's a gematria. So you have to take the numerical value of Erev and the numerical value of Biker and add it to 2300.
574.
What's Erev? 272
274.
plus 302. What's 272 plus 302?
574, like I said, yeah. 574.
274, 374, 574. So now you have to add 574 to 2300. That's
2874.
2874. 2874 from when? Because we're no longer in the year 2874. 2874 from when we left Mitzrayim. Now, when did we leave Mitzrayim? We left Mitzrayim in the year 2448. 2448 plus 2874 also ain't doing you too good.
That's for 52 something, right?
5322.
That's
That happened
long
already.
gone.
Long gone.
400 and some odd years ago.
But Rashi says, why do I like this pshat? To say Erev and Boker is Gematria? The answer is because if you say that, that would be in sync with another number given at the end of the Sefer. The end of the Sefer says in the year 1290. So the year 1290, from when the Tamid stopped, is exactly 2874 from the time we left Mitzrayim. So
But still, it doesn't work. It didn't happen.
oh yeah, but it's after Rashi's time. It's after Rashi's time.
So what was his question? He wanted to know the
When
period
was
of
the
time
time
that
that
would
would
last. Well, what would last?
The-
That there
the
would
time-
be
the
an
time it
idol?
would be replaced. The
Yeah.
time the Avodah would be reinstituted.
In other words, the Malach wanted to know when is this going to happen that the Talmud stops and Avodah Zarah is in its place. So he said that will take place until
Yeah.
2800, 2300.
He knew when the starting point was.
Oh, but he apparently knew when the end point was.
I'm saying, did he know?
Apparently, the question was not so much as when it would start, but rather until when it would extend.
So we're back to the same conundrum that we had. When do we start counting Yitzias Mitzrayim? Do we start counting it from the late as Yitzchak and just being absurd? So you get all that problems there because you don't have a good starting point.
You can't come
And
to
the
a
ending
point
point, if the ending point has been 400 years ago, it also ain't doing us too good.
Well, we
too
don't
much
know what the starting point is, so we don't know what the end point is.
Yep.
Can't figure it out.
So let's see what Rashi's cheshbon is. Okay, Rashi's cheshbon is, why does Rashi want to say Erev and Boker are numerical values? V'yesh smach l'davar. The allusion to the support of this is Mishnei Tamim for one of two reasons. Ha'echad sheyiyah cheshbon zeh mechuven and cheshbon acher sheb'seif hasefer. If you look in Parak Yud Beis of Daniel, there it gives you a date of what? 1290.
490 years, right? Doesn't.
Yeah, it says in Yud Beis Yud Aleph, Elef Yamim Elef 1,000 days, Masayim 200 v'tishim and 90. Days refers to years over there. 1290. So that would be in sync with this. The thing is, you have to know when the
You needed to get to the 2874.
in other words, if you count 1290 from the time the Talmud stopped, that would be equal to 2874, starting from Yitzias Mitzrayim.
Yeah, but the end result is the Talmud wasn't reinstituted then.
Correct. So now you have to either
You have
Erev
to figure
Boker.
out that the starting point was wrong,
Either Erev Boker means something else entirely,
or the starting point
or you have to start from
a different number.
Chorban Bayesheni.
Even then, it doesn't work, right?
Well,
2874 from Korban Bayesheni.
2874 from Chorban Bayesheni, yeah.
Well,
That's in a very long time. That's in 3,000 years.
Right.
That's going to be in 3,000 years.
yeah, but
It's gonna be in 1,000 years.
The world doesn't exist after 6,000.
Elamai Bayis Rishon. So that's why, Sefer Daniel is Chasam V'Sas, and it's completely sealed. We have no idea. We don't understand. But
We need a supercomputer to figure out
let's-
all the permutations.
let's see Rashi. Let's see Rashi.
Especially the contract.
Let's see Rashi. Another reason why Rashi feels Erev and Boker is Gematria is because of the need that Daniel had to have Gabriel explain to him the meaning of Erev and Boker. Now, if Erev and Boker doesn't mean a numerical value, and it's straightforward, Daniel would not have needed this explanation. Now look at the next Rashi. Let's see if we can figure this out. The Nitzda Kodesh, the holy ones will be exonerated. Yechupar Avon Yisrael, the sin of the Jews will be forgiven. Levato Gezerois, to abolish the decrees of Midrasan or Meravsan, to be trampled and stepped on. Meyaz Golu, Golus Rishona, Lemitzrayim, until, from the time they were exiled in Mitzrayim, Ad Yigalu, until we'll be redeemed, the Yoshiu, Chuas Olamim, and have an everlasting salvation. B'melech Mashiachenu, from King Mashiach. B'cheshvan Zeh Kala, this cheshvan will end, L'Soif Elef V'reish Tzadik Miyom Husar HaTamid. 1,290 years from when the Tamid stopped. V'hushanemer b'Soif HaSefer, that's what it says at the end of Sefer Daniel in Parak Yud Ume'ez Husar HaTamid, Kedei Loses, Shikut Shomim, Yomim, Elef, Reish Sadik, Yehav, Lo Yoser, Sheyavai HaMelech Mashiachenu, V'Yoser Shikut HaShomim. Okay. V'HaTamid Husar, now listen to this. The Tamid was removed, Vav Shanim L'fnei HaChorban, Vayisheni. Okay? 6 years before the destruction of the second temple, the Tamid stopped. V'hem Itzelam B'Heichal, at that point, the Itzelam was erected in the Heichal. What day of the year was Itzelam put up in the Heichal? Shavasa B'Tammuz. The Yom Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, right? 2 weeks from now. Shavasa B'Tammuz. Shesaraf Apostamos Es HaTorah. Apostamos burnt the Torah. Ubatel Es HaTamid. V'hem Itzelam B'Heichal. Kamay Sheshanim B'Msachas Tainas. Rashi says, how do I know 6 years before the Churban Bayesheni? Maybe it was 5 years, maybe it was 4 years, maybe it was 17 years. Says Rashi, I have no explicit proof that it happened 6 years before Churban Bayesheni. V'sheisham shekzati ein biyadi raya mefureshes, ach yesh raya sheshavua shalem loy batatu. One thing I know is it was not a complete Shemitah cycle that the Tamid stopped for.
How do you know that?
Why? Shekeni be Daniel al Titos. Because Daniel prophesied on Titos. V'chatzi hashavua yash bezevach u'mincha. That for half of a Shemitah cycle, the carbon Tamid won't be brought. Kiloimer mikzas hashavua shlufnei hachorban. For part of a Shemitah cycle, that definitely implies not a full one. So Rashi says, I could get away with saying it was 6. 6 is still half of a Shemitah cycle.
I mean, it could have been part of one Shemitah cycle and part of another, right? So you could have those continuous years. It wouldn't have been a full Shemitah cycle, but you could have had 4 years from one and 2 years from another. That would be 6 years, and it still wouldn't be a complete Shemitah cycle.
So in that case, it could be more than 7 years.
It could.
Right?
But I'm saying, so...
But Rashi is assuming a Shemitah cycle means a 7-year cycle. So if that's the case, so then the Tamid could not have been abolished for more than 6 years. For part of a Shemitah cycle before the Churban, Yevadlu HaKarbanos, Kach Mefurish Lamata Be'inyan. Okay, now let's get back to the beginning. Keitzan Mechuvan Cheshvan Erev U'Baiker. How are we going to calculate this Cheshvan of Erev and Baiker? Alpayim U'Shalosh Meos. 2,300 Miyoim Redas Yisrael Mitzrayim. You count 2,300 years from when we went down to Mitzrayim.
What year was that? 210 before...
Well, put it this way. Let's count. We went down to Mitzrayim. So Liyos Kala L'Soif Elef Arei Sadik, then that would be set to end 1,290 years. In other words, if you count from when we went down to Mitzrayim, so then 2,000... In other words, we went down to Mitzrayim, the Tamid stopped, so 1,290 years after the Tamid stopped should equal to 2,300 of our pasuk.
When you say it's equal to 2874?
So no, but we're going to be the 574 short, so we're going to have to say the Erev Boiker is the Gematria. So Reish Yud Hayu b'Mitzrayim, right? So you write this down. We were in Mitzrayim 210 years until they built the Beis Hamikdash. After they left Mitzrayim, so they're 40 years in the desert. How many years were they in Eretz Yisrael before they built the Beis HaMikdash? 440, right? Miyam Tseisam Ad Vayiven Abayis Dal Meos.
From where? The Exodus to the building? 440, 480.
From the Exodus.
The 440 plus the 40
No,
in the middle.
from the Exodus until the building 480, but from the entrance of Eretz Yisrael until the building 440. Okay, so right, 480. Miyam Tseisam Ad Vayiven Abayis. Dal Meos V'Yud Haya Habayis. The Beis HaMikdash stood 410.
Jason was out when he was insane.
Yeah, but I just said from the time they entered Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Okay, then 70 years in the mid. Rabbi Ein Shana Gos Bavel. 70 years in Bavel. And Bayis Sheni is 420. So now add up. 210 plus 40 plus 440 plus 410 plus 70 plus 420. That gets you 5, 9, 10, 17, 19, 3, 7, 11, 15. That gets you 1590.
It's supposed to come out to 1290, no?
The Dalin Meos V'Chav Ten Alim Elef Reit Tzaddik. Add 1290, which is what? 0, 18, 2880. But we have to get what? Okay, Harei Alpayim B'Chesmeos. Semehem Vav Shanim. Shusar Tamid Lefnei Chorban. Shleimana HaKosef. Elef Reit Tzaddik. The 1290 is only Elom Meis Susar Tamid. Harei L'Chal Cheshvan Erev U'Boiker. This pasuk says 2300, not 2874, right? Harei L'Chal Cheshvan Erev U'Boiker V'Alpayim V'Gimel Meos Oy Noisa B'Cheshvan.
You heard that gematria, the 2300, you get 2874.
Now Oy Noisa B'Cheshvan, another Cheshvan we have to add, is Ashrei HaMachaka, fortunate is one who waits, V'Yagil L'Ketz HaYamim, Mem Hei Shana Yisem Al Elef V'Reit Tzaddik. Later on in Daniel, to this whole cheshbon of 1290, it says not 1290, but 1335, another 45 years. So from there we learn that Mashiach will come, it will hide for 45 years, and come back.
I mean, he will be on this earth for 45 years, incognito. And then he will appear?
He'll reveal in some way, hide, and then return. Because we have one cheshbon of 1290 and one cheshbon of 1335. Okay?
It sounds excellent.
The Rebbe's going to come back.
Right? V'rei tzaddik yesh shloim al cheshbon harishon yatsa hamelech hamashiach v'yachzor v'yiskaseyem oisam mem heishanim. He's going to hide for 45 years. V'Rebbe Lezer hakaler yasad. Where the kaler, the great payat, in the end of the Yotzros for Parsha Chodesh, v'yisoid shiru shivim shiru shuayim shisha harei membeis. The Hakalir writes, sing for 42 years. It should be 45. He didn't count 3 of the years. In other words, Rashi now is dealing with a very important issue. And that is, at the end of Daniel, it gives you one cheshbon of 1290. Look at the end of the Sefer. The end of Daniel in Parak Yud Beis, Pasuk Yud Aleph, it says, Elef Masayim B'Tishim 1290. And the very next Pasuk says, very nice 1290. But fortunate is someone who could wait to 1335. So what is it? Is it 1290 or 1335? The answer is, it will come in 1290 and then come again in 1335. Now Rabbi Say, the cheshbon of Rashi gets you to the year of, if it's 2874, from the time that Rashi's cheshbon of 2874 is from what day? From when we went down to Mitzrayim. We didn't go down to Mitzrayim in 2448. We went down to Mitzrayim in 2238. Okay, so that's even 12.
It's even earlier.
It's even earlier. 5112, which is 600 years ago.
60.
Now, if let's just say for speculation, just for a matter of curiosity, if you would add the year 2874 to when we left Mitzrayim, that would give you another 210 years.
Still earlier than today, so it's 400 years ago. 450.
Which would get you to where?
450 years ago.
453.22.
Right.
What if you added, from when the first Beis HaMikdash was built, you added another 480 years?
Well, what's the year of the first Beis HaMikdash?
480 years after Rashi's Cheshbon. No, excuse me, not 480 years. 210 plus 480.
690.
That would get you to the year 5802.
So we still got 29 years to go. Right, 57, 73. You got 29 years to go.
All right. Bottom line is, we should all be zeicha to see the Ketz Hayamin. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.